Hi, so my name is Emily Brandon, and I am here today to talk about Juan, who is an immigrant student who is limited English proficient and Spanish dominant. And I have come to address some reasons why limiting his Spanish is a bad idea and in the long term will absolutely hinder his success. I've also come to provide a couple of recommendations as an alternative to limiting his Spanish. So there is a common misconception out there that learning two languages will inhibit a student's ultimate growth. There's been no research to substantiate this. And in fact, there's a considerable amount of evidence that proves otherwise. So let's imagine that we continue to remove Spanish from Juan's life as a means to enhance his English. So say he does have special needs and he has a very small, limited vocabulary in Spanish, and when you take that away, what tools are you giving him to learn more language and to grow in that? You're essentially removing his foundation, and so you're causing him to start from ground zero, which seems more harmful. So it's very clear that because one does know some Spanish, perhaps the analysis that he is has special needs or is underdeveloped, perhaps that's not the case, because if one can learn one language, then why should we believe that he cannot learn two? So I think this is the main problem of recommending that one stop speaking in Spanish. So the special education teachers, I would like to point out, decided that Spanish was not helping Juan to develop his English. However, that does not mean that it's hurting his English at the same time. I think that's a wrongful implication, and there's just no research to suggest that removing Juan's Spanish would help him with his English. So I have a couple of recommendations here. The first is that I believe the special education teachers should readdress the ways in which they have evaluated Juan. So was he tested in Spanish? Was he tested in his native language? Was there an adequate interpreter there? Were there multiple forms of evaluation? Mexican Americans are 10 times more likely to be recommended to special education programs. And I can't help but think this is likely because we are not testing these students in the right way. So it would be my recommendation that we retest him in his native language. Even if it still yields results that he is special needs, I think it would give a much clearer direction as to how to proceed, just given that the test results are more accurate. So my next recommendation, which really should have been my first, is to continue speaking Spanish at home. One should not have to be cut off from his native language, and moreover, he should not have to be cut off from his family's native language. It is known that Juan's mother does not speak English, she only speaks Spanish, and that she herself is concerned that she will be cut off from communication with her own son, which is absurd. So in Juan's case, relative to his English development, continuing to speak Spanish at home would have a number of benefits insofar as removing the Spanish would be detrimental. So if a student is no longer allowed to speak their native languages at home as they've always done, this is going to be a really jarring experience for Juan. He could likely suffer some blows to his self-esteem because he now only has a language to use with which he is not comfortable. So this could have destabilizing effects, even beyond one. It could really just hurt the family unit. And I think that's what's most important as we are educating English learners, is to involve the family and support the family unit and not destabilize the family unit, and push the family away. So that's precisely what would happen if Juan is continued to be subjected to this rule of not speaking Spanish at home. It's arbitrary, it will not help his English acquisition, and it will, in fact, destabilize him on a personal level, and destabilize the family unit as well. So, my last recommendation for Juan is, I think special education teachers need to reevaluate why they consider him to be so language deficient. So oftentimes what looks like a learning disability is extenuating circumstances that are not actually related to language acquisition skills. So for example, maybe he has a strained relationship with a teacher. Maybe they have kind of a miscommunication where she or he is not seeing things as they really are, as related to his language skills. Maybe it's the case that he is suffering from a fear of failure, because, learning another language can be extremely intimidating, especially when all of your coursework is in that language that you do not feel comfortable with. So, is he experiencing a lack of self-esteem or fear of failure? Other things, if he's from an immigrant family, maybe he and his family live in poverty. So this can have some pretty destabilizing effects as well, on his ability to succeed in learning the language. So again, these are just some other reasons why Juan could be underperforming. So I think before we leap to such drastic measures as cutting off Juan from his native language and family, we should also look at some other reasons why he may be struggling. And maybe if we can address some of those underlying issues that are not directly related to language acquisition, that he might have a much easier time with language acquisition. So those are just some of my recommendations. I hope this was helpful to you, and I hope that you will take this into consideration before you continue to implement this English-only policy. All right.